Something that I have always wanted to talk about but never got around to making an actual video on it is microdrifting. There are so many people that claim it is abusing game mechanics and it is an exploit, and there are equally a lot of people who say it was put in the game so they're using it to the best of their ability. I am a firm believer that because it has been put in the game, they fully intended for it to be used, but may not have expected it to be utilized at the level it is now. And I'll dive into that in a second. If you all enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. We are super close to 600 and getting closer to 1,000 every day. I want to get monetized and start making 10 cents off every video. That's what I want, y'all. But anyway, let's dive into the topic of microdrifting. I would assume pretty much everyone in the community knows what microdrifting is in Unbound, but for those who do not, microdrifting is the process of having grip to the road but still being able to maneuver and drift, resulting in a technique to gain burst NOS and travel faster around turns. In simpler words, think of it as drifting but without going completely sideways. It is a little tough to explain video wise, but I'll be doing it a bit throughout the video so you can see what I'm talking about. A lot of people call it an exploit, cheating, abusing game mechanics, but is it really? There is no way that something like this would have been left in the game if Criterion themselves thought it was an exploit. Now pay attention to what I said. Criterion themselves seen it as an exploit. That is a big difference than the community seeing it as an exploit. Also, I did not say that exploits have never been left in games before. We are talking about Need for Speed Unbound, not the racing game from 15 years ago that you remember had a glitch to get infinite NOS. To back this claim up, I have a few examples that actually were considered exploits by Criterion, and they were taken out extremely fast. The first one I have is when we could bring the Ferrari Pista down into B class. That quote-unquote exploit was so bad that it made them change the entire class system and limit cars to only being brought down one tier from their starting class. As soon as this was discovered and brought to the masses' attention, it was taken out the game. The second exploit example I have is the ability to start in higher gears before a race would start for manual players or pre-shifting. The advantage manual players got over automatic players was so insane that there was no point in even being automatic. The launch off the line was a solid 3 seconds before the people in automatic could even stop redlining throughout all their gears. And what happened to this? It was taken out. Though it wasn't as quick as the Pista fix, it was ultimately removed, and that's the point I'm trying to make. The things that are seen as quote-unquote game breaking, they either nerf or remove. The Golf got nerfed. The Regera got nerfed. A bunch of cars that were really good in lower classes could no longer be put there. A bunch of changes have happened over the time the game has been out, but what has stayed the same? The ability to microdrift and the ability to combine it with burst NOS. Not once has it been touched in any way. They have not touched the amount of NOS you could get, the speed you could get it at, the ability to use burst NOS and microdrift at the same time, the time you can microdrift, nothing. They have yet to change any aspect of this so-called game-breaking exploit. This is just me, but don't you guys think that if microdrifting was not supposed to be the way it is, then they would have at least nerfed it? It has definitely been one of the highest complaints for the community, and the dev team 100% know about it. In fact, I am so sure that they know about it because there have been Criterion devs that worked on the game literally watching Need for Speed Twitch streams of competitive players. And what do you think those competitive players were doing for majority of the races? Microdrifting. If racers were supposed to either do straight grip or straight drift, then why do they let us have a combination of both, which is what microdrifting is in the first place? It is the sweet spot between being in a full drift and being 100% planted to the ground. Sure, you could say that it wasn't intentional, but neither was the pre-shifting or the Pista being able to be put in B tier. As said before, those are gone and did not come back. So it's leaning towards maybe it was intentional. The thing about it is that in my opinion, Criterion did design the cars to be able to microdrift, but did not expect it to be used at the levels it currently is, which is why it seems so exploitive in nature. Think of it kind of like how the tracks for the game were designed for the cars that race on them, but weren't made with the thought that one day people could go as fast as they do on them now. Anyway, I do believe that they intentionally made it so that microdrifting could get burst NOS, and that you didn't have to rely on straight grip, drifting, or near miss to be the only ways to get NOS. Of course, I was not included in the game designing process, so we could never know for sure if that is the case unless the dev team comes out with a statement, but in my mind, it makes a little bit of sense. Microdrifting has been in the game. It is nothing new to the Need for Speed series, but with Unbound, it has a new mechanic with it that other games did not. For Need for Speed Heat, microdrifting was a thing, but because the NOS came from a different place, it didn't seem exploitive. It was still faster to microdrift around turns in that game, just like in Unbound, but Unbound has just added more to it. I wouldn't call it an exploit though. An exploit in racing games refers to using a game mechanic, design oversight, or glitch to gain an unfair advantage that goes beyond the intended gameplay. Is it a game mechanic? Yes, absolutely. But is it giving an unfair advantage? No. Who is it giving an unfair advantage to? The person that doesn't know how to do a technique that is free for them to learn? If that is the case, then the same argument could be made about racers using manual over automatic. Is it a game mechanic? Yes. So is using manual an exploit? It's faster than automatic is, and everyone doesn't know how to use it, so I guess manual racers have an unfair advantage then? Another thing is exploits are also game breaking. Is microdrifting game breaking? Nope, it's not. In video games, game breaking refers to bugs, glitches, or exploits that disrupt the intended experience, often rendering the game unplayable, stopping progression, or heavily unbalancing the gameplay. A game-breaking issue can come in various forms, from a glitch that causes the game to crash to exploits that provide such an unfair advantage that they are ruining competitive balance. I do not see an unfair advantage being shown when seeing people microdrift, and it certainly does not break the game. Unbound has plenty of other things that do that already. The only thing that separates those who microdrift from those who can't is the lack of knowledge of how to do it correctly. I do not believe that this can be abused either. It's not a loophole or a design oversight in my opinion, and I also do not believe that it creates an uneven level of racing between skillful players and their driving abilities simply because in order to microdrift, you need to be skilled at driving in the first place. How can microdrifting be something where success depends on exploiting it rather than skillful driving if you need to be a skillful driver to do it? If you look at any person who can microdrift correctly, it is not as easy as it may look, and it requires a lot of skill to not only be able to do it, but also maintain it through turns and while boosting at the same time. For everyone who has not even attempted at trying to do the technique, I want you to try it and see how easy it is to apparently exploit this game mechanic. But the bottom line is, I do not believe it is cheating or exploiting the game. There is proof that things Criterion see as cheating are taking out the game from their side. We are not talking about external cheating like mods, we are talking about internal things like pre-shifting. But how do you all feel about this though? Do you agree with me about microdrifting or do you disagree? Let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed, make sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.